Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. Awesome show planned for you today. Hit that 5-star review if you're listening over Apple. Please help us fight that algorithm. If you're watching over YouTube, hit the likes, hit the subscribes. Make sure you got your notifications turned on. Fantastic show I got in store for you. Great fire starter I got in store for you. A great lineup of our regular contributors, Delano Squires, Shemeka Michelle, Steve Kim, will all join us today. But we'll start with my fire starter. Before I get to the fire starter, I want to tell you what's fueling me today and most days. It's my First Cup. Today's episode is brought to you by First Cup Coffee, a Christian-owned patriot coffee company that stands for core values, family, and building community across the nation. First Cup's freshly roasted beans delivered in ground or whole bean texture, pods in bulk. Go to firstcup.com and use the code FEARLESS and save an additional 10% on your order. If you subscribe, save an additional 10% for the life of your subscription. Guys, you're watching me in real time on this show develop a passion for coffee. I love it. I love this First Cup. They sent me their variety pack now. Finally, we have that, and so I'm looking forward to delving into more delicious brews and different tastes. I'm loving this coffee. Thank you, First Cup, for supporting this show. So, I have a lot to unpack before we get to Delano. And it's going to be a challenge for me to unpack all of this and make it all make sense, but I think I can do it. I'm going to be tested today, but I want you all to stick with me. Some of this stuff will be relatable themes that you've heard me talk about on this show and just trying to bring it all together for you. And what we like to do with these fire starters is take the news of the day and then explain to you the news of the day or the news of the night or the news of the previous day and explain to you how it relates to what's going on in modern culture. Some people complain, like today, you know, there's the New Hampshire primary, big day for Donald Trump, big day for politics, all of that. And they'll say, Jason, why are you talking about sports? And I talk about sports because I think it's the best lens to examine the fall of man. And once you understand the fall of man, and once your eyes have been open to the fall of man and how we got here, and then you start looking out at the rest of the world, then you can see why it's happening, and it all makes sense. And so I want to start, and it's like, wow, where's Whitlock going? How's he going to get there using the sports world? Last night, Joel Embiid scored 70 points in the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns scored 62 points in the NBA last night. Everybody, oh, look at the NBA. It's on fire. Joel Embiid, Karl-Anthony Towns. The NBA is just going crazy. And, man, these players are so great. And I have a completely different take. And there will be those of you out there that will say, man, Whitlock's just an old man shouting on his lawn, always saying that things were better in the past. And I'm really not. I'm just trying to keep things in perspective. And so I want to walk you through how the poorness, the lack of fundamentals, the lack of competitive fire, the diminishment of the NBA, the lack of relevance, the lack of top flight level competition, it's all tied in to the destruction and the planned destruction of man. And sports is a great tool to convey a message and to get other men to accept the destruction of man and to buy into a new definition of manhood. And so let me help you here in terms of why I'm critical of or suspicious of, or think like Joel Embiid and Karl-Anthony Towns, 70 and 62 points on the same night. I mean, when someone scores 70 points, that's a really big deal in the NBA, and it usually speaks to man, that's one of the all-time great players in NBA history. That man is a beast. That man is a legend. That's what it used to signify. And there used to be just a small handful of people that actually had scored 70 points. Now, with Joel Embiid added to the list, there are now 9 NBA players who have scored 70 points or more in a game. Let me read you this list. Wilt Chamberlain, of course, he's listed several times having scored more than 70. Kobe Bryant scored 81 in a game. David Thompson scored 73 in a game. Elgin Baylor, I believe, scored 71. David Robinson, I believe, scored 70 or 71. Donovan Mitchell has now scored 70. Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, and now Joel Embiid. So before 2017, when Devin Booker scored 70 points, there were only 5 NBA players that had ever crossed that threshold. And that was Wilt, Kobe Bryant, David Thompson, Elgin Baylor, and David Robinson. So Wilt and Kobe, I think everybody's like, man, those are 2 of the 10 greatest players in NBA history. There's an argument Elgin Baylor is one of the top 20 players in NBA history. And there's an argument that David Robinson, top 30, top 40. David Thompson, for people that don't know him, great talent. I think had some vices or whatever that, stopped him from, he's like the original or a different kind of Michael Jordan. But David Thompson was, I'm not sure if there's been anybody in the league that's more talented. There may be guys as talented, but not guys more talented. And here's the thing about David Thompson and David Robinson, the 2 Davids on this list. They both scored 70 or more points on either the final night of the regular season or the second to last night of the regular season. And they were both in scoring title battles. In 1978, David Thompson and George Gervin were in a battle to be the number 1 scorer in the league. And David Thompson closed out that battle by scoring 73 points in the final game of the season so that he could take the scoring title from George Gervin. In 1994, David Robinson and Shaq were in a battle for the NBA scoring title. And David Robinson scored, I believe, 71 points at the end, either second to last game or last game of the 1994 season, to wrap up that scoring title and take it from Shaq. Those were intentional efforts to feed a certain player to get him the scoring title. It's like Larry Brown was, I believe, David Thompson's coach and told David Thompson, go get it, man. Do whatever you want. Get that scoring title. They fed him the ball all night. I think he shot 38 times, hit 28. Anyway, that's how David Thompson wrapped up the 1978 scoring title. David Robinson, same deal. He wanted the scoring title. They signed off on it, and he got it. Hats off to David Robinson. Hats off to David Thompson. Everybody else before them, Wilt, Kobe, and Elgin, they were just in regular season games. They were magnificent, transformational, transcendent NBA players who were capable of exploding offensively and going off, and they did. Wilt, several times, he was so much bigger and more athletic than just about everybody in the league at that time. Wilt was impossible to stop. Kobe, you know what Kobe was, a killer and just a brilliant scorer, the imitation of Michael Jordan. Elgin Baylor, God, it's hard to put Elgin Baylor in any, maybe Tracy McGrady of his era, but better. Maybe I would have to push myself for a comparable for some of you younger people. But all of this is going on in the NBA. They've softened the league and removed the resistance, but the internet is feeding you propaganda and feeding you propaganda that, no, you're not seeing a league that's less competitive. You're not seeing a league that doesn't value defense. You're not seeing a league that has inflated scoring and changed every rule to make it easier to score. No, you're seeing the greatest collection of players by far in the history of the NBA. And young people who weren't witnesses to what greatness and true competition used to look like, they're going for these explanations. This morning, I watched a 15-minute propaganda video about why scoring is elevated in the NBA. Young man who put it together did his due diligence, but it's pure propaganda promoted by the NBA. We're going to play like a 2-minute snippet of the explanation of why everybody's scoring so many more points in the NBA and how it's just a reflection of these are the greatest players you ever saw. Those players from the olden days just weren't that good. Watch the clip.
Over the years, great offensive players have proven that once your offensive game gets to a certain point, there's only so much a defense can do to slow it down. And instead of there being a handful of these unstoppable offensive players in the league at any given time, like we saw in previous eras, there are now dozens of players of this caliber all around the league. In the 90s, it was Jordan, Malone, Hakeem, D-Rob. Not just good offensive weapons, but truly elite. In the 2000s, it was Kobe, T-Mac, Shaq, Iverson. The 2010s had LeBron, Durant, Harden, Curry. But now, in the current era of the NBA, these elite offensive weapons are everywhere. Embiid, Luka, Giannis, Shea, Durant, Fox, Curry, Booker, Mitchell, Tatum, Jokic, Trey, Halliburton, Maxey, LeBron, Dame, AD, Edwards, Kawhi, PG, LaMelo, Brunson, Kyrie, Sabonis. All of them legitimately unstoppable offensive talents from night to night. And that's just the highest tier. It doesn't even include guys like Morant, Zion, Bane, Markkanen, Ingram, Cam Thomas, Randall, Jaylen Brown, Kat, Sengun, Scottie, Garland, Paulo, Siakam, Butler, Mikal Bridges. The league is more talented now than ever before. So how do you stop all that talent? You don't. You just try to keep up. Between a massive change in the way young players are being taught to play the game, to new advanced analytics that have opened the doors to the best statistical options for teams around the league, to advancements in health and training regimens that have allowed older players to be at the top of their game longer than ever before, all factors building up to what has become the most loaded pool of talent in NBA history. But how do we know when it's gone too far?
So, that's a load of garbage. It's a load of propaganda. And it's all being said to disguise the fact and to convince you that, man, this new stuff is so superior to the old stuff, and this new way we're doing things is so superior to anything in the past. And man, they're basically man is better now. Man is so superior to his former self. And I know I sound like an old man shouting from my lawn and I'm outdated, but it's just not true. Man is not better than his predecessor. We're actually weaker. We're so reliant on things that previous generations could do in their sleep. If all of our technology disappeared, most of us would starve to death without DoorDash, without fast food, without Instacart. If we didn't starve to death, we would commit suicide because we're incapable of taking care of ourselves without technology. And even the stuff that we think we're taking care of ourselves with is actually destroying us. They're feeding you a lie that, and again, the sports world is very important in convincing men to go along with the elimination of resistance. We used to believe iron sharpens iron because we believe that because it's true. The more resistance you apply to a man, the stronger he got. The NBA, since 1979, since Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the NBA in 1979, the NBA saw an opportunity because it was struggling at that time in terms of relevance. And it's like, man, we got these two transcendent stars, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Look what they just did to college basketball. How can we fundamentally change the game and take advantage of Magic and Larry and make the game easier to score, therefore more interesting? And so in 1979, the NBA introduced the three-point line. And that was done to open up the court, give more access to the lane, to the rim, make it easier to score baskets because things were clogged up in the middle without the three-point line. And virtually every rule change that has happened since 1979 has been about making it easier to dunk the basketball, to make it easier to get to the rim. When you start talking about eliminating hand checks, and when you start talking about the initiation of the defensive 3-second call, which happened in 2000, 2001, I believe. Yeah, 2000, 2001. When you start implementing that, all that does is clear up the paint. When the defense can't hang in the lane for any length of time and provide a double team or provide backside help to a post player, it just makes it easier for a post player to get to the rim. It just makes it easier for a perimeter player to beat his man off the dribble and get to the rim. And when they start putting the circle underneath the basket and your feet got to be here, or it's an automatic block, everything they've done has been about making the game easier. We see the exact same thing. I'm talking about the NBA today, but we see the exact same thing in football. Everything that has been done to football over the last 40 years has been about making it easier to score touchdowns. Everything to make it more safe. And so the NBA, same thing. It used to be a very physical game. There used to be a price of entering the paint. Remember the Jordan rules? Jordan got knocked on his butt when he went to the rim. That was Detroit's rules. That was the rules of the NBA. Jordan paid a price for attacking the basket. They eliminated all of that in hopes of creating future Michael Jordans. Well, the reason why we love Michael Jordan is because he was only one. Scarcity drives value. Why is gold so valuable? Because it's scarce. And you got a propagandist on the internet arguing that no, now we have 20 Michael Jordans and this is better. It's not better. It's all these little imitation Michael Jordans doesn't make the game better because anybody with seasoned, mature eyes can see this is fraudulent. These are fugazis. These aren't Michael Jordans. These are overpaid kids that haven't been put to a true test, don't understand the fundamentals of the game. They haven't gone through the fire. They haven't gone through any rite of passage. They show a little bit of talent at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And then everybody pampers them and just says, how can we get this guy to the NBA by age 19? Let's don't teach him anything. Let's just make sure that he's a lotto ticket that we get to cash when he's 19 years old. And so they show up to the league untrained, no fundamentals, no real they have skill, but they don't know how to play the game. I'm not making this up. And soon I'm going to show you all-time greats and just people in the NBA that know exactly what I'm talking about and they're talking about, but you're being fed propaganda. What you're watching is the greatest thing ever. This soft, emasculated game. Oh, that's so much better than what Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem, it's so much better than the game they played. This is better. That's the lie you're being fed. It's a dangerous lie because that lie is fueling everything across America in terms of reducing resistance and rites of passage and all the things that made men strong. They've all are being eliminated and or reduced in American society. I pointed out to you that the safety concerns, that the making the game easier deal started in 1979. 6 years, and this is where I'm combining these two things, stick with me. 6 years before that, the United States of America eliminated the military draft. There's been nothing more beneficial to American men than the military draft. Nothing. It was an incredible force for good in testing and improving young men. That was the rite of passage, military service. And so how did they get us to a point where we were good, where we couldn't see the benefits of the military draft and military service, and we couldn't see well, man, this is fueling strong men. This is what's making our country great. This is what's protecting all these freedoms, and this is what has covered up a lot of our flaws, men going off to the service. How did they end that? And before I get there, it's personal for me because my father was inducted into the Army, drafted into the Army. That's my dad in the Army at age 19, I believe. My uncle was drafted into the Army. My other uncle, my father's brother, served in the Marines for 30 years. These guys were all, for lack of a better description, it applies to all of them. My uncle, John, and I'm not trying to be funny, just to refresh your memory, my Uncle John's the guy that left me his porn collection at his death. I love my Uncle John. I love him. He was one of my best friends. I say all that, let me make the point about my father and his brother, my Uncle Kenneth. These guys didn't know their dads. My last name is not Whitlock. My father was always lied to about who his father was. Never met. My dad never met his father. My Uncle Kenneth, I don't believe ever had a relationship with his father. I'm not sure if he knew him, but I do think Whitlock was his father. My Uncle John, again, my grandfather, Paw, it wasn't until later in life that Paw started claiming Uncle John. And so these three guys in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s had no relationship with their father. At 18, 19 years old, they enter into military service. My dad was in the Army for 2 years. I believe my Uncle John was in the Army for 2 years, maybe 3. Can't remember fully the details. This changed the course of their life. This gave them a foundation to stand on, that they stood on for the rest of their lives. They're all past now. These were great men, productive, tax-paying citizens. not criminals, had a little gambling problem, but certainly not criminals. The military made them men. Why would we take that away? And we look at our young kids today and we wonder what's wrong with them. Where's their resistance? What's their rite of passage? What fills in the gaps if their father is absent or a deadbeat or not very good? Where do they get their appreciation for this country? When did they ever ante up? These young kids today, when did they ante up? See, when you serve in the military, now you have a stake in the future of this country. And we're looking up and wondering why our young people have no stake in this country, have no respect for this country, have no respect for elders, have no respect for order, have no respect for authority. We've taken away their number one rite of passage in 1973. All because the media and television, which up until social media and the internet and the cell phone, the television has been the primary tool of communist propaganda and just propaganda and control and the destruction of men. Television has been that tool. And so I want to go back to 1968. Walter Cronkite was the voice of American television. And Walter Cronkite reported the news and did not give an opinion on the news until 1968 and the Vietnam War. And in 1968, Walter Cronkite broke protocol not at the behest, but with the permission of his bosses at his television network. He broke protocol and took a dump on the Vietnam War. I'm not going to re-argue the Vietnam War, but there are people, and I've watched several documentaries and read some books where there are people that make a very strong case that the Vietnam War was a just war, that the American media demonized that war effort to draw a line in the sand with communism, draw a line in the sand with the governmental mindset, ideology that demonized religion and Jesus Christ and the whole American ideal, that communism was worth fighting. And Walter Cronkite, unbeknownst to him, and the American media, unbeknownst to them, but doing what they're told, demonized the Vietnam War and everybody involved in it, turned the veterans into pariahs in their home country. But in 1968, Walter Cronkite, again, broke protocol. He's always just stated the facts, not given an opinion, until he took a dump on the Vietnam War. Let's watch the clip.
It is increasingly clear to this report that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victims, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy.
During the last 3 minutes of the CBS Evening News on February 27th, 1968, Walter Cronkite told the American people what he thought they needed to hear. After reporting for months in Vietnam, the legendary news anchor put his objectivity aside and delivered an editorial that has echoed for decades. The Vietnam War had turned into a bloody stalemate, and it was time for our troops to come home. It wasn't until years later that most Americans learned the grim realities of what happened in the jungle battlefields half a world away. But it was Walter Cronkite who became the voice of a country tired of war and cemented his place in the history books as one of the greatest American news anchors of all time. See, you've got to understand, while everyone on TV today has an opinion, in Cronkite's times, It was all about the cold, hard facts. So when he broke that mold, he expected a lot of pushback from the network. But according to the famous self-titled biography, CBS President Dick Salant was on the same page. He thought Cronkite could use the trust he'd built up over the years with honest, factual reporting to cut through the rosy picture of what America was achieving in Vietnam. Some say, after his editorial first aired, President Lyndon Johnson claimed, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." A month later, Johnson announced he wasn't going to run for a second term.
So that's 1968. And this is like when Operation Mockingbird was in full blossom mode. To me, it started in 1963 with the clip I've shown you guys time and time again of Dan Rather going on national TV 3 days after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I've been showing you this clip for 2.5, 3 years maybe. But I'm going to show it to you again. Dan Rather, a young reporter in 1963, went on national TV and sold the lie that John F. Kennedy got shot from behind and his head plunged forward when the Zapruder film. He was a handful of media people that got an early look at the Zapruder film just 3 days after the assassination. He goes on TV and tells a whopper of a lie. Play the clip.
In the next instant, with this time Mrs. Kennedy apparently looking on, a second shot, the third total shot, hit the president's head. His head could be seen to move violently forward.
That lie cemented Dan Rather's television career. And he eventually went on to replace Walter Cronkite as the authority in the news media. But this all came to fruition again. 1968, Walter Cronkite breaks protocol, starts giving an opinion. All the MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, every jerk off on TV offering up an opinion and telling you what to think about the news. It all started with Walter Cronkite and his boss co-signing it, probably giving him directions to do it because that's what the people in power wanted. And so the demonization of the Vietnam War ended the military draft, conscription, ended it. One of the greatest tools in the development of men, the military draft, is destroyed because of the Vietnam War. You couple that again, military draft ends in 1973. What year, so I should have did the homework, what year was Title IX implemented? That's around the same time with Richard Nixon. Why I can't I can't believe I'm not this that I need to look. 1972. 1972, Title IX. Title IX is about the investment and the development of women. That Title IX, investment, development of women. 1973, in the draft, which invested in the development of men. Let's reduce resistance as it relates to men every chance we can get. Let's make men weaker. That's what they've been doing since 1973. You can see it clear as day in the sports world. I want to, and now that we've moved from TV being the number one tool of propaganda to the cell phone and the apps on your cell phone and that access to the internet on your cell phone. They're now using YouTube videos and social media clips to convince you, as you watch men get weakened, as you watch men's excellence get reduced and diminished, they're using their tools of propaganda to, it's never been better. This is great. All of these emasculated, emotional men all over TV whining and crying about everything. This is awesome. You're watching sports that aren't nearly as good as what they used to be, but it's the greatest. It's never been better. We're watching rookie quarterbacks in the NFL come out and put up numbers and play like they are Roger Staubach and Terry Bradshaw and John Elway and Warren Moon in their prime. And you're going for it. This is the greatest thing we've ever seen. This is the greatest performance. And again, I don't want to dump on all these young kids. But what they're doing in the NFL, in the NBA, in any of these sports, it's not as good. It's not as impressive. They get spoon-fed everything. They got people talking in their ears, telling them the plays. You're too young to remember, or you've forgotten, or you don't care, or they've convinced you it's irrelevant. Quarterbacks used to have to know the entire playbook and were routinely asked to call the game. And you think what we're seeing now is the same as Terry Bradshaw getting sacked and run around all over the field, having to get up on his feet and remember, well, what play do I want to call? He didn't have someone talking in his helmet telling him exactly what play to call. But you think what these guys are doing now is more impressive than what they did then because they got stats and analytics to tell you, well, look at what a higher percentage of passes they're completing. Look at how many touchdowns they're throwing. John Elway only threw this many touchdowns and he threw this many interceptions. I know that I'm old, but I've seen Tom Brady talk about it. And before he died, I saw Kobe Bryant talk about it in the NBA. I've seen Greg Popovich talk about it. This week I saw Antoine Jameson, a very good NBA player, former excellent college player. I want to play these three clips back to back of just Kobe, Popovich, and Antoine Jameson just talking about the fundamental lack of fundamentals in the NBA and just how primitive, unskilled these players actually are.
In my day, everyone knew the game. That was just you. Or do you really think it's gone backwards in that way?
No, it has. I mean, our development in USA basketball, you can just look at that on the surface and the difficulty and the challenges that we face in playing international competitions. So when I grew up and growing up overseas in Italy, I was very fortunate because I caught the teaching time in Europe. So, the Red Holtzmans, the Tex Winners, and all these great coaches at the time went over to Europe to teach coaches, have coaching clinics of how to train players. So when I was growing up, I caught the fundamentals of that game, right? Pau Gasol, Manu Ginobili, same thing. And so you look at the difficulty that we have had in international competition is because these players learn how to play the game and think the game at all levels. Pau Gasol, just as comfortable handling the ball as he is in the post. Marc Gasol, right? You look at San Antonio Spurs and the way that they move the ball. And so we have to do a better job developing our players.
We hear.
There's more fundamental teaching done now than I had to do when we were a championship caliber team. That was more making decisions during games, calling a certain play, drawing a certain play, making a certain substitution, looking for mismatches. The mechanics of the game of chess while the game is going on, because those guys knew what they were doing. And they were fundamentally sound. These guys are neophytes, and we're not at that stage, so this is more positioning on the court, spatial relationships, man and ball, all the stuff that they would do in college, but they didn't go there. And if they did, they went for a year. So it's a different kind of teaching. The game stuff, I don't get to do quite as often as before, because of that, because we're not in that position.
Jamal Moses is a good friend of mine. I had him in Cleveland, And I congratulated him when he got the job, and he was like, Twan, I'm teaching them how to set a proper screen. And he's not talking about rookies, he's talking about guys that have been in the league for 2 or 3 years, and I'm just like, you know, we learned that in college, fundamentals and things of that nature. So
high school.
The game of basketball has changed. I mean, imagine us playing in today's game.
I'm not telling you these things to make you hate the NBA and to make you quit watching the NBA. I'm telling you because you can see in the NBA what has happened to man outside of sports. When men used to go through the process, and again, I'm not sure what percentage of men were drafted into the military, but enough to make a difference in the culture. Men that served in the military for any length of time, when they came home, they were better men than they were when they left. And overall, it elevated the quality of men overall. Now we send men off to college. Now, instead of turning men over to patriots, super masculine drill instructors and commanders that teach a set of values that are trying to be in alignment with a biblical worldview, at least making the effort. I'm not saying they're successful, but just trying to be consistent with a biblical worldview. Now we send men and women off to college campuses where they're taught by secular elites who don't believe in God, can't stand God, don't believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, are teaching a set of values that are anti-American, not patriotic, anti-American, and they're teaching men that you are the root of all evil and that the matriarchy can save us. This is a planned destruction of men to make us weak. You can see it in sports, but it applies to the rest of our culture. It is everywhere. Your cell phone, social media, YouTube, everything on the internet is designed to make man weaker. It's your cell phone. What we're doing, it's the enemy of wisdom. It's the enemy of respect for older people. Collected wisdom handed down generation to generation, the old teaching the young, was the way we moved this country forward. The way we protected the freedoms and biblical values that made this country great. We've eliminated all of that. Wisdom now comes from your cell phone. Punch it into Google. Don't ask grandma or granddad. Don't ask your mother or father. Don't ask your older brother. Don't ask your high school football coach. Punch it into Google and get programmed into the right answers, the right thoughts. Go to Twitter to test out what position you should take on any particular issue. Don't ask your minister at the church. Don't ask your priest at the church. Ask Google. We've all been programmed to do this. And the message that the internet and the social media apps and YouTube are constantly spitting out. The masculine Christian man is the root of all evil. He needs to be destroyed, and women can save the world. That's what's going on. And that's why they've removed all resistance from sports and made everything easier, because they don't want men tested. They don't want us to have any kind of difficult rite of passage that actually elevates us and takes us to another level. It's why they've installed clowns in all positions of authority and leadership. I'm going to end with one last example, just circling back to something I wish I had covered last week or last Friday when I criticized all of my critics. But Jeff Teague, the former NBA player, his 520 podcast, this is a former NBA player that hosts a podcast. I forget who he's connected. Is he connected with the Volume? I can't remember. Former NBA player. He's from my hometown, Indianapolis. He does it with the Volume. I just want to play a little, because I looked at several of their other clips, when not just the stuff they were talking about me, and I was just like, what is going on here? Here's Jeff Teague, just a little snippet of the kind of content and the kind of language that's used on his show. Play the clip.
When I say I was geek, I didn't text the chat. I'm like, yeah, when they coming to the city? Yeah. All for DJ to be like, bro, that was fake news. That's why I hate you motherfuckers over at NBA Central. Yeah. Because I don't be looking
Central
at
with the E.
Central with the E.
Town.
And I follow that.
They are terrorists.
Because they be lit.
No, they should be cracking.
They be cracking.
You know
over
what
there.
I'm thinking about? I'm like, I'm about to DM it. We'll see when they come in town.
Nah,
Yeah, I was happy for I'm like, damn, shouts out to you.
Yeah, but I know, bro. Seeing that, I'm like, that shit was presented really well, bro, because it was right after Ja. I was like, damn, finally IT got a chance. I know he gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Finish out the season.
They full of
I
shit,
offered
bro.
DJ to ruin it for me.
Yeah, I'm like, damn, I'm about to DM say congrats, bro. If you ever come to the city.
That was gonna be terrible.
See, I'm glad y'all told me he flagged, because like, I play.
Yeah, DJ responded fast. Yeah.
So a lot of that's bleeped out. They're dropping MFs, they're dropping the N-word, they're SHIT. It's just, and here's what's amazing about that. NBA player, former NBA player, him and his buddies, I get it. Barbershop talk, blah, blah. Jeff Teague is a high school basketball coach, head high school basketball coach at a major high school in Indianapolis, Indiana, Pike High School. Pike High School's head basketball coach does a public podcast where they just sit around, drop the N-word, MF, all this profanity. These guys have no understanding of the position they're in, their ability to influence kids, and how they're influencing kids in a negative direction. A high school basketball coach is doing a podcast out in public. His kids can see it. The kids he's supposed to be leading can see it. He's cursing and talking like a ghetto thug. When I say young people aren't being discipled properly, young men aren't being discipled properly. They all want to appear young. That's why Deion Sanders wears the gold chains and brings in the rappers, because they all want to be relatable to young kids. That's not the role of man. It's to provide wisdom to young people. And we've abandoned that because we're unwilling to make any real sacrifices for the next generation. My entire theme for this year, I've already told you guys, it's about growth and sacrifice. If there is no sacrifice, there will be no growth. We've moved into a time where sacrifice and taking risks and being challenged and overcoming adversity, that's all being eliminated for men. So that we have soft, emasculated, emotional men who feel like they have no real responsibility for leadership. None. Because a responsible leader would be like, man, I got kids that follow me. I can't be out here in public just cursing and talking crazy with my boys. I can't do it. Again, y'all hate it when I bring up Deion, but I saw Deion, he's the head football coach, and I saw him on Nightcap with Shannon and Ocho Cinco, and I'm not complaining about Nightcap. Enjoyable show. But as the head football coach at Colorado, you can't be on that show when they're telling wild stories about sex. You're the leader of men. There's some sacrifices you have to make in order to be that leader that we're unwilling to make. We all just want to be relatable to young people. We all want to recapture our youth. None of us want the responsibility of leadership and the sacrifices that go along with that. And we look out and wonder why our kids are in a disaster. They're in free fall. We're not providing them the basic fundamentals of manhood. You wonder why they have no respect for elders, their parents, classmates. You wonder why they're so easily triggered and emotional. And oh my God, someone said something to me and I got to fly off the handle. I want to be careful because I don't want to sound like I'm picking on people, but this is why I complain so much. I just watched a video, or talked about a video last week. Dan LeBatard, 55-year-old man, on a show talking about my friends want to beat up Jason Whitlock. Who talks like this as a grown man at 55? And no one bats an eye. No one questions it. How emasculated have we become? How far have we moved away from our proper role? That 55-year-old men are on podcasts about, yeah, my friends want to beat you up and don't nobody like you. This is, so when I look out at the NBA and see how soft it is, see how little resistance there is, see how they're passing off all these fraudulent superstars as if they're the same as Michael Jordan. When I listen to all the propaganda trying to cover up for it and defend it. When I listen to Popovich and Kobe Bryant and everybody, and Tom Brady's like, the fundamentals, these kids don't have it. They don't have it in real life either, outside the world of sports. They don't know yes, sir, no, sir. They don't even know about showing up on time. There's a whole system that's telling them showing up on time is white supremacy. The fundamental basics of male behavior have not been taught, and it shows up everywhere. That's why I continue to talk about sports, because you can see what's happening in all the world through the lens of sports, because this is their little primary tool to normalize a lack of fundamentals, to normalize buffoonish behavior. If you have any success in sports, you must immediately celebrate it with an individual dance move or gyration that draws attention to you. There is no team. There is no sportsmanship. There is no greater good. There is no sacrifice. Sacrifice is denying yourself some pleasure that doesn't serve you in the long run. When we come back, I'm going to bring Delano into this conversation. I want to talk to you guys about my new best friend, Cardio Miracle. You want to know why I look so great today, why I look so happy and upbeat? The workout I had this morning, amazing. 42 minutes on my Stairmaster, between level 8 and level 9, pretty much the entire time. I got maybe 2,500 steps in, 140, 150 floors. It was incredible. And part of the reason why is because I'm in love with Cardio Miracle. Cardio Miracle is a proprietary formula that supports heart health and improved immunity. I have been taking this product for the past few months, and I'm a huge believer. The main ingredient in Cardio Miracle is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is essential for life and is involved in many critical body functions, especially keeping arteries young and flexible. Heart disease remains the #1 cause of death in the U.S. for men and women, according to the American Heart Association. Approximately every 40 seconds, someone in the United States will have a myocardial infarction. Nitric oxide helps keep blood pressure and cholesterol at healthy levels. It also supports anti-inflammatory response, natural energy, and better recovery, and it promotes good sexual health. With over 50 ingredients, Cardio Miracle gives you a health boost in each delicious serving and fulfills almost every daily nutritional need. It is your one-stop wonder for your daily serving of cardio health. Support healthy blood flow and deliver some vitamins, nutrients, and minerals to your entire body. Get started now for a healthier, happier you by visiting cardiomiracle.com/fearless. Receive 10% off your first order, 15% if you choose to subscribe and save. They also offer a 60-day, no-risk, 100% money-back guarantee. That's cardiomiracle.com/fearless. I know my cousin Lloyd is watching because Lloyd texts me all the time, and we talked the other day. Lloyd called me last week when we first started talking about Cardio Miracle, and he's like, dude, you got Cardio Miracle. I've been on Cardio Miracle for 6 months. Lloyd, unlike me, is the picture of good health. Personal trainer, guy's all ripped up, lives out in Phoenix. But he's like, oh, I'm so glad to see you on Cardio Miracle. Lloyd, I'm glad to be on Cardio Miracle. It is helping me. I can't tell you guys, I can't give a stronger recommendation. Cardiomiracle.com/fearless. All right, Delano Squires, next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
All right, welcome back. Time to hear from Professor D, Delano Squires. Delano, welcome back to the show. Looks like you're in a new studio, huh? Or you moved to a cabin out in the woods somewhere in D.C.? You got that?
I wish. No, it's a new room in new studio in the same building. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, great. It looks great. D, what do you think of my take that all resistance and all development of men has been put way on the back burner, and we have a breakdown in fundamentals in sports, and we have a breakdown of fundamentals with men just in life in general?
I would agree largely with that take. Actually, a little bit earlier, I was giving some remarks to some of the interns at work, and one of the things I noted, Jason, is that whether you are in Philadelphia or Portland, there are young men, particularly I'm thinking since 2020, who had opportunities to tear down buildings that their grandfathers built. And one of the things that I said to the interns is that this generation in this day and age, even sometimes the older people, speaks the language of destruction. It's destroy, deconstruct, dismantle, tear down, whereas previous generations spoke the language of building, of planting. And I think one of the reasons that Americans today spend so much time trying to adjudicate issues that happened 50, 60, 70, 100, 200, 400 years ago is because our society no longer understands the building blocks, what it takes to build, because we don't create anything. We're not creating strong families. We're not creating institutions. And that's why people are always looking to talk about what their ancestors did 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago, as opposed to what they are going to build for their descendants 100 years in the future.
So one of the things I argue, D, is that obviously you and I, this show, we spent a lot of time talking about the Great Society initiatives and the destruction of the Black family, or just family in general. Mm-hmm. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about like what the military did for men in general, whether Black, white, whatever. And again, it's very personal for me because my father, my uncles didn't either know their fathers or didn't have great relationships with them. And, for lack of a better description, these were street guys. And if not for going off into the service, they would have remained street guys. But, you know, I talked with my father quite a bit about his military service and how that gave him a whole different outlook on life and opened up his mind to like, man, I can start my own business. I can have what I desire right here in America. It just changed him. And certainly with both of my uncles, it changed them. Didn't make them perfect, but just made them better. I think ending the draft is one of the worst things we've ever done.
Talking about controlling your own body, you know, there's some people who don't like conscription for that reason. But I think there's a lot to your point, Jason. And I mean, I think oftentimes about like the Tuskegee Airmen, right? And I've used them as an example of diversity done right. So obviously, units were segregated at a particular point in the military's history, and black men were not allowed to become aviators. And what happened is, you know, a class was opened up. These guys were trained and given an opportunity to show what they could do. And they wanted to be held to the highest standards possible. And even though, you know, the myth of them never losing an aircraft in World War II has been disproven, they didn't have to be perfect in order to show that they were worthy of that honor, being able to serve their country. But a Tuskegee Airman won the Air Force's first quote unquote Top Gun competition. I want to say this was in 1946. My date might be off. But these are guys who never wanted to be held to lower standards. And I think, to your point, the military is one of the few institutions in American life that is committed to instilling discipline and structure into the people who pass through. Our schools no longer do that, obviously. A lot of kids don't get that at home. Churches are afraid to take positions that, even though they're leaning on the Bible, it's not even the pastor's leaning on his own authority. So I do think the military has played an incredible role in allowing men, particularly young men, to travel, to see the world, to take on leadership positions. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, right? Obviously, there may have been ceilings in terms of what particular guys could do in their service, but it also brought together people from different backgrounds and made them become in a cohesive unit. And it's one of those things where the military shows that, no, unity is our strength. Diversity is good. I'm not saying it's not good. When you have a unit that has men from Brooklyn and Indianapolis and California, they can learn something from each other. But at the end of the day, the reason they are a unit is not because of the diversity of their backgrounds. It's because of the thing that they're fighting for in their country that they are defending. But now the U.S. military is focused on identity politics in the same way that major corporations are. I remember a couple years back, they cut an ad with a woman. It was like a cartoon ad about how she had two moms, and they were so brave when they went to their pride marches. And then she said, well, I want to do something brave with my life. But it's the same spirit, Jason. It's the same navel gazing that you get everywhere else in the culture. Me, my, mine, I. It's not about, you know, ask not what you can do for your country, you know, what country do for you, but what you can do for your country. It's always about using every institution in our country as a means and vehicle for personal fulfillment. And I think what you see in the culture, broadly speaking, is exactly what you're seeing in the military today.
And so, do you think it's a coincidence that in 1972, we passed Title IX and basically say, hey, we need to provide women stiffer tests in athletics and more support. And then in 1973, we end the military draft and we say, hey, men are being tested too much. And, you know, we need to soften things up for men. We need to make it tougher for women, softer for men. And now we look around 50 years ago, men are softer, women are tougher. Are we better off for it?
I do not think that's a coincidence. I think this was part of the play for the second wave feminists from the beginning. But what they didn't realize is that when you make men soft, you have no one to defend you when some number of them turn around and say, you know what? I love women so much. So I will love women so much. I want to be one, and I'm going to push you out of your own spaces, ladies. And now those second wave feminists have no defense mechanism against. They wanted to tear down the patriarchy, Jason, and now they end up with the matriarchy, and they have no way to tell Caitlyn Jenner or any other quote unquote trans athlete that no, this space does not belong to you. They are defenseless against Will, aka Leah Thomas, because they wanted men to be soft. And you're right. Over the last 60 years, the American woman has gotten much harder, and the American man has gotten much softer. And we're right at that midpoint in our social experiment in terms of finding out what happens when you condition a generation, 3 generations of women to hate their femininity in the name of liberation. And now you're training young men. And sometimes this is coming from the ultra right-wing red pill bros, the Andrew Tates of the world, and some of the other guys that tell young men to get vasectomies in their 20s in order to maximize their worth in the dating market. Both of these ideologies are anti-human, anti-marriage, and anti-family. And I think that's why both need to be rejected.
So this battle, this softening of men, hardening of women, is the church, and let's take color out of it, just the church. Is the church fighting against this, or are they co-signing it?
Well, there's some churches, some pastors who are still fighting a good fight and have their flag firmly planted in Scripture, right? Who realize that androgyny is not equality. But like every other cultural institution, a lot of churches have gone soft. We've talked about this particularly with the context of the Black church, but sort of mainline Protestant churches are, I mean, every week on woke preacher clips, I see some new video of some Methodist church in New England with everybody's, you know, the clergy of God has on rainbow colored vestments, and they're talking some garbage that they fuse with leftist identity politics, and particularly LGBT politics, with the Bible. And I think some aspect of the Black church is on that same trajectory, because you have pastors now who 20 years ago could affirm or would affirm that a marriage is between one man and a woman, and that man and woman are 2 different sort of categories, now who have gone soft and saying, oh, when they strike down abortion rights, the next they're coming for is marriage equality rights. And the GOP is transphobic and bigoted against our trans brothers and sisters. So yeah, a lot of churches are compromised. But thankfully, because God and His sovereignty and His providence, there's always a remnant that remains. And I pray that they grow stronger and that their courage becomes contagious in the larger culture.
I've asked for a Fannie Willis clip, and I want to see if these guys can grab it for me real quick. But Fannie Willis is, again, you know, spoke at a church in Atlanta and spoke from the pulpit. She's caught, quoting Chameleon there, riding dirty. And instead of going to the church for repentance, she basically went to the church for affirmation and got it. You know, your reaction, you know the clip I'm talking about. You've seen it, I'm sure.
I know the clip.
The fact that she could turn to the church and get affirmation, to me, speaks to how feminized and how matriarchal the church has become. That's where she would think to run for cover.
I mean, Jason, I think this is a symptom of a much larger, more complex sort of social problem, particularly within the Black community. And it's that the Black church, and I don't want to say not every church that's majority Black fits this bill, but the churches for whom, quote unquote, social justice and income inequality are their sort of main organizing principles, has been in the midst of an identity crisis, I'd say, for at least a half a century. And these are places oftentimes where the gospel is not preached and the Bible is not taught properly.
Delano, hold for 1 second. I want to give the audience a tiny bit of context. So I want to play There's several clips, but just one of the clips to give people a taste of what Fannie Willis did if you hadn't seen it. Let's play. I think this is where she plays the race card.
And I hired one black man, another superstar, a great friend, and a great lawyer. Oh Lord, they gonna be mad when I call them out on this nonsense. First thing they say, oh, she gonna play the race card now. But no, God, isn't it them who's playing the race card when they only question one? Isn't it them playing the race card when they constantly think, I need someone from some other jurisdiction in some other state to tell me how to do a job I've been doing almost 30 years. God, why don't they look at themselves and just be honest? I mean, can't they keep it 100 with themselves?
So just for, and Delano, take as much time as you want, but just for context, the woman is funneling money to her married adult lover, $654,000. He's taking vacations with her, paying for plane tickets for her to go on vacation with him. He's married. She goes to the church, not seeking forgiveness, repentance, guidance. It was a very defiant speech that was received warmly inside the church. I don't have a specific question. Take it wherever you want to go or finish up whatever you would. Take as much time as you want.
Jason, I hadn't even seen that clip. I saw a different one where she talked about black women shouldn't be expected to be perfect if you want us to save the world, something to that effect. I hadn't even seen that clip, but yeah, I'm assuming it's from the same speech. It's not even a sermon. And as I said, the black church is in an identity crisis. First of all, I guarantee you that Fannie Willis did not make a gospel proclamation in that speech. She didn't call people to repentance because she can't even call herself to repentance, right? So you have these buildings that are called churches where people meet on a Sunday. The gospel is not preached. The Bible is not taught. It's certainly not taught in context. And all it is a rallying station for their sort of progressive politics. And people like Fannie Willis understand that they can do this because they know that in large swaths of our community, we have been infected with the sellout spirit and bewitched by the sellout spirit for a very, very long time. And there's not an institution or a group in our community that we will not sell out for the right price. And if that price is racial solidarity, if that price is political gain, if that price is financial gain, we will do it. And Fannie Willis knows that. O.J. Simpson knew that. I remember watching a documentary a few years ago. O.J., when he got big, didn't want nothing to do with black folk. He probably had the same line as Shannon Sharp. If you see me with a black woman on my arm, right? And when he got in a jam, what did he do? He went to the black church. He shows up in his kente cloth, and it's oh yes, we got to defend O.J. This man he didn't care about the people who were defending him and who were making themselves look like fools defending a person who almost decapitated his ex-wife and her lover. But people know that they can play this card with us. And the people who play the race card from the bottom of the deck are the very same black folks who demand diversity, equity, and inclusion in every area of society. They say, vote for me because I'm black. I represent you. I'll be a first, right? I'm breaking down barriers. And then as soon as they get into their position and they're held accountable, like everybody else who's held the position, then they say, don't criticize me because I'm black. So their race, sex, and sexual orientation are both sword to slash down barriers and shield to defend themselves from protection. And that's one of the reasons that Fannie Willis knows that she can go to the black church, because she knows that church is so morally corrupted and biblically bankrupt that nobody, even the lead pastor, is going to say, we don't take Sunday morning for people to give political speeches in this place. This pulpit is for Christ to be proclaimed, not for Fannie Willis to be defended. So I think even more than her, the people in that church should be ashamed of themselves, and they need to repent and ask God's forgiveness for allowing his sacred sort of body to be blasphemed in that way?
I don't know the answer to this question. That's why I'm asking you. Shouldn't a church, like their primary agenda, shouldn't it be calling sinners into repentance and warning them about the wages of sin? Shouldn't that be because and I'm personalizing it or whatever, but it's like I sit there and think if the church, particularly the black church, did its job, I wouldn't, nor would this show look so out of step, because if the church were doing it, everybody would say, well, Jason's just mimicking, and Shemeka's just mimicking, and Virgil's just mimicking, and Delano, they're just mimicking what they do in the church, pointing out errors, saying, this is why it's a mistake, you need to correct this. But since the church doesn't do it, the followers don't do it either. And the church has convinced the followers that no, affirmation is what we're supposed to do. And I'll put a bow on, and this will be my final question to you, I'll put a bow on the whole thing. It goes back to removing resistance. Don't test men, don't test anyone, don't call them on their errors. Remove all resistance. Affirm everything. That's how you build great men and women. And I just totally reject that.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, in many of these churches, they've lost their way. Jason, I saw a clip from Mark Lamont Hill the other day. He was at a church in, I want to say Chicago. I think it was St. Sabina Church with Father Flager, who's very active in the community, does a lot of anti-gun violence work, so on and so forth. And Mark Lamont Hill was there to talk about, Palestine and Israel and the conflict there. And what struck me, even in the 2-minute clip, is that you could tell Hill, who I've never heard him profess to be a Christian, understood that what he was there to do was give a performance. He had the cadence of a black preacher, right? He had the movements. He had sort of the sing-songy delivery. But I didn't watch the entire clip, or the entire sermon, or the entire speech, excuse me. But I would be extremely surprised if at some point he made anything even approaching a gospel call and told people, as you said, that the wages of sin is death, right? And that Christ, God sent his son to die for all who would believe, and that we could, have everlasting life if we turn from our sins, repent, and trust in Christ. I highly doubt that Mark Lamont Hill said anything about that. For him, the black church is an institution that has historical roots, whose primary purpose is for social, political, and economic transformation. It is not for heart change. It is not for spiritual transformation. It is not to make dead men come alive in Christ. It is only to advance a particular social and political vision for the world. And what I'm saying is those churches are dead. Those buildings would be better used as housing for low-income people, as homeschool co-ops, because they're not churches. They have, in the same way that Caitlyn Jenner is not a man, right? I think we need to bring back the word transvestite, because it has that root word vestments in terms of appearance. These places are not churches, right? Because the church has a function and a purpose. These places are buildings that have stained glass windows and people in clerical collars who get up and talk about politics. And I think we need to get away from that. And to your point, Jason, one of the reasons that people don't understand this show and what you're doing is because the church is no longer fulfilling its sacred obligation. And many people, this is across the board, not just black folk, have turned away from religion. And particularly as the black community continues to become more secular, we're going to be even more vulnerable to Marxism and every other type of ideology that tells us to reject God, reject marriage, reject his design, reject family, and embrace politics and the state as our ultimate source of salvation.
Delano, thank you. Great job as always.
Thank you, Jason.
A reminder why we need to have you on more often. Great job. Guys, I want to talk to you about preborn. You guys know I love preborn. Last year, because of you, Preborn's network of clinics saw over 58,000 babies saved. Thank you to all who made this possible. Let's celebrate these precious babies. When Antoinette found out she was pregnant, she was in a bad place. She didn't know how she could raise her child on her own. She searched for an abortion clinic, and God led her to a preborn clinic where she met her baby on ultrasound. When she saw her baby and heard the heartbeat, she broke down crying, and the nurse reminded her that babies are blessings from God. Antoinette chose life. Her daughter's name is Treasure because she is a gift from God. Preborn has countless stories like this, and that's why we must, as fearless soldiers, continue to support Preborn. They are changing the world. They are blessing the world with more and more babies and helping mothers make the right decision. And then Preborn provides that support that woman needs to get through the pregnancy and through the first 2 years of that baby's life. Your $28 donation, your $280 donation, your $2.80 donation all goes to saving babies' lives and paying for ultrasounds and diapers and baby food and all the stuff that a baby needs to get through their first 2 years and 9 months of life. That first 9 months starts at conception. Guys, there's two ways to give. Pound 250, say the keyword baby. Pound 250, say the keyword baby. Or give the way that I like to give, preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. When you're making that donation, send me an email at fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. It warms my heart. It inspires me. It gives me strength to come out here and try to do the greatest show possible for you guys. Shemeka Michelle is going to join us next. All right, welcome back. Time for some Shemeka Michelle. Shemeka, I want to change up topics, talk a little bit about Nikki Haley. She's still running for president against Donald Trump, the New Hampshire primary today. But I want to get to the bottom of all the racism and discrimination that Nikki Haley faced. Shemeka, have you seen this video where Nikki says, you know, she was a little brown-skinned girl, she was just made fun of every day, and she still has those scars? Well, let's play the clip of little Nikki.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the deep South as a brown girl. Anybody can look at my record and see when Walter Scott was shot down by a dirty cop, how I made sure that the Walter Scott family didn't suffer because we put the first body camera bill in the country in place. Anybody can look at the fact that when we had 9 amazing souls die in Mother Emanuel Church, I did something that no Republican or Democrat ever wanted to touch, which was call for the Confederate flag to come down because it would take 2/3 of the House and Senate and was an impossible feat. I don't know what you're implying with that, but what I will tell you is saying that I had black friends is a source of pride. Saying that I had white friends is a source of pride. If you want to know what it was like growing up, I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me. So look, I know the hardships, the pain that come with racism. It's the reason that I fight bullies every day when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, or hate, and I always will. If I didn't mention slavery on that day, it's because that's an automatic. There's always been, the Civil War's always been known about slavery.
My first question, and God forgive me and all you feminists whose heads are going to explode, I'm going to apologize up front, but did South Carolina, did they forget where the kitchen was? Because she's saying they didn't know where to put Nikki, and I'm sure I used to live in the South. I used to live in South Carolina. They got plenty of kitchens in South Carolina. I would have known exactly where to put her.
That's crazy that you say that because I was thinking I do not want Trump to choose her as VP. Now, chief of kitchen staff may be where she needs to go. But I think this woman is lying. I don't believe a single word coming out of her mouth. Number one, I had no idea she was brown because not only has she tried to be a white woman for as long as I can remember, her skin is aging like a white woman. So this idea that she was picked on every day for being brown, I just don't buy it. I think I saw that she was born in 1972, which means I'm right behind her. And while I didn't go to school with white kids, I took baton, gymnastics, jazz with white kids. I don't
Hold
remember
for one
them.
second. Hold for one. That's Nikki Haley's class photo, not Shemeka's. But leave it up. I just want that bit of context. Go ahead, Shemeka. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I took baton, jazz, gymnastics with white kids. I don't remember them picking on me for being black. I don't remember them playing in my jerry curl or wondering what was different about me and them. We just all got along and I did not experience that. And I grew up in the South. So I just don't believe her. In the first grade, there was a little boy, Sekou Mendez, only brown little boy in the class. We all loved him because we didn't have those, at that time in abundance like like now. So I just refuse to believe that she was picked on every single day. Has she encountered some kind of I don't even know if I would say racism, but maybe questions, they call these microaggressions, racism, whatever. Maybe at some point, I'm not going to say she's totally lying on that, but she's totally lying that someone picked on her for being brown every single day. And you have these black kids in the class with you. If anything, you might have heard them calling each other Black African booty scratcher. I started to ask production today, do I look like an African booty scratcher? Because I can't get my lighting right today. This is how it went down amongst us as Black people. So I just refuse to believe she was ostracized by both sides because she wasn't Black or white. Nikki, stop lying and take off that leather. You not that girl. You not Melania. Go back to your little stiff, stuffy clothes that you've been wearing this entire time. Put them boots back in somebody else's closet and be who you've been for the last few years, because this little change up, we're not buying it.
And again, I'm not that politically smart or savvy. I had no idea until a couple of weeks ago that she was Indian. No idea. So I saw somewhere, someone sent me a tweet like, Indians are taking over the Republican Party. And I was like, Vivek, one guy is, and then and then I did the homework. I said, oh, they talking about Nikki Haley, and like she's Indian. I had no clue. And look, I don't know what happened in her childhood, but she's 5 years younger than me. And look, if you hop into the arena of politics and just leadership, I just don't want to hear any whining about when I was a kid, I got called. And again, I was a great athlete and very popular, but I was always the chubby and or fat kid in school and heard fat jokes. Who cares? I mean, particularly, I didn't care then and I really don't care now. I won the race. You were the governor of South Carolina. You should be laughing at all the people that allegedly made fun of you because you were a brown kid. To me, what it sounds incredibly like is that this woman wanted to be white, and she felt bad as a kid that she wasn't a little white girl. And so she dreamed of a little white boyfriend and a little white husband and a little white picket fence. And that's what she got. And so I don't understand what she's whining and crying. I don't get it. It's not an adult conversation. It's pandering to the media. It's why I can't stand her. It's why, if Trump picked her as VP, it's all out the window for me. I'd jump on the RFK bandwagon in a heartbeat if he picks this woman as VP. And this is where I had a friend get upset with me because I cracked some jokes on Kamala Harris when she got VP, and my boy was like, that's a black woman, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, man, when I was cracking jokes for years on Sarah Palin, for years, no one said a word. I mean, I used to, somebody said something stupid, I'd say Palinite, blah, blah. I trashed Sarah Palin. No one cared. And this was before I realized I was a sexist pig. Now that I know that I'm a sexist pig, I feel very comfortable trashing Nikki Haley and saying that if she's anywhere near the vice president's office, and I can't say it because, look, if Carrie Lake was vice president, I'd be all for it. If Tulsi Gabbard, I'd be halfway for it. But I'm just like, Nikki Haley, no dice. She's, a Democrat in wolf's clothing or a wolf in Democrat clothing. I don't know what she is. She's a idiot.
For sure. I'm a sexist pig right along with you, Jason. I honestly don't want to see a woman at all. I did Sky News Australia over the weekend, and they asked who I would choose for VP or who I wanted. I didn't even consider Nikki Haley. I went on this whole tangent about, whoever Trump chooses, I'm going to support him 100% because she's not even on my radar. I'm thinking about, DeSantis, or would I prefer Vivek? I don't want her at all. This is how much I don't like this woman. And with this video coming out, with her doing this victim mentality, the same thing we hear Democrats do all the time, I really don't want to see her in office. So let the Indians take over. Maybe we'll get the 7-Eleven here in Durham again if Vivek is vice president. I don't mind at all. But I don't want to see Nikki Haley, and I am begging Trump, please don't do that, because I may be right along with you, Jason. I may have to stay home because I don't want her as VP. I don't think that she's a genuine person. I think she has a lot of the same beliefs as Hillary Clinton. She is Hillary Clinton with dark hair. And that's all I see when I look at her. She wants war, endless war. I do not want her as president or vice president. So she doesn't have my support. Now, if they want to put her in the kitchen, let her snip some roses in the garden, I'm all for that, but not running the country in any type of way.
Thank you, Shemeka. Great job as always. We're going to sneak in a little Korean Cosell. Steve Kim. We'll talk about
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps and I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Korean Cosell. Steve, before I get to Brian Baldinger's breakdown of the fumble in the Buffalo-Kansas City game, I wanted to get your thoughts on Greg Popovich, Antoine Jameson. I found an old clip of Kobe Bryant, all talking about the breakdown in fundamentals across the NBA, and brought it up today because obviously Joel Embiid scored 70 and Karl-Anthony Towns scored 62. It's this great night for NBA, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Steve, before you get rolling, I want to play the clip of just the clip of Popovich talking about how he no longer gets to coach the nuances of the game because he has to teach fundamentals. Play the Popovich clip.
There's more fundamental teaching done now than I had to do when we were a championship caliber team. That was more making decisions during games. calling a certain play, drawing a certain play, making a certain substitution, looking for mismatches. You know, the mechanics of the game of chess while the game is going on, because those guys knew what they were doing and they were fundamentally sound. These guys are neophytes, and we're not at that stage, so this is more positioning on the court, spatial relationships, man and ball, all the stuff that they would do in college, but they didn't go there. And if they did, they went for a year. So it's a different kind of teaching. The game stuff, I don't get to do quite as often as before because of that, because we're not in that position.
I agree with Popovich. I don't think he's just making excuses. I think this is a reflection of the state of the game.
Jason, rarely do I agree with that man. I wholeheartedly do here. And this is a fact. And I've read books, and you talk to anyone that's ever been in basketball at a high level. And I recently read, back in December, Kurt Hastings' book about his experience playing for Bobby Knight and why his NBA career never took off. And he said, the bottom line is, once you get to the NBA, they really don't coach you anymore. There is a belief, at least back then, and he played about 20 years ago, that once you get to the NBA, we're just playing games. And there's very, very, very little fundamental teaching. And if you need that schooling and that seasoning, you are forever behind the 8 ball. And so this goes all the way back, Jason, to the AAU circuit. You go back to how there's a lot more club basketball. I don't know if there's traditional high school basketball really exists anymore, like when we grew up. Then you have the one and done, or sometimes the none. So these players, athletically, they may have a higher upside, but in terms of absolutely knowing how to play the game of basketball from a fundamental level is gone. And that's why I find it laughable, Jason. And every once in a while, I get dragged into these conversations on Twitter that today's athletes and today's players are better. I find that to be the most dishonest statement that is made in all of Twitter. Yes, that right there. I literally had people tell me that Magic Johnson couldn't shoot the ball and that in today's game, he'd have problems getting his shot off. And that just shows me either you don't know basketball, you never played Magic, or never saw Magic Johnson actually play the game. Because he could shoot the ball. He just was not a natural jump shooter, but he had a wide variety of shots from inside the post. And he actually became a decent three-point shooter, but his game always evolved. And there's another issue here, Jason. The individual work ethic of players today, and I know this is a broad generalization, I think is not very good. The players do not evolve year to year in the offseason the way they used to. And I would look at an example, and again, this is the harshest case, Ben Simmons. That guy has not gotten announced better. I don't think he cares. And in fact, the guy that you recently brought up, Dreamers Pro, Charles Shabransky, does a lot of basketball videos. I watch a lot of his stuff. I'm a big fan of his, because anyone that respects Michael Jeffrey Jordan to the degree he does, well, I respect that to the highest degree. And he did a video where he basically called out, Ben Shabransky did, calling out Ben Simmons as a bum who does not care, and he's a malcontent, stealing money, who's very entitled. So this whole culture of the AAU, the one and done, the load management, think about it. You have players that need to learn how to play basketball, and we're literally telling them, hey, sit out games. Really? So Pop himself, in my view, has a little bit of blame to this because he created that culture of the load management. So it is what it is. And one final thing here before I wrap it up. I love the fact that Jokic is just absolutely dominating the NBA. A relatively unathletic, slow, pondering white guy that never plays above the rim. Because if I ever hear once again that the players in the 80s could not play today because of the athleticism, I'd say, really? You mean like Jokic? That's what I have to say about that.
And look, Luka Doncic isn't the most athletic player in the NBA either. And he's killing the game as well. Look, it's so clear cut to me that the game has fallen off a cliff, and they put out all this propaganda to cover it up. And now there's supposed to be 25 Michael Jordans and Hakeem Olajuwons just running all over the NBA, and it's just not true.
Jason, can I amend a statement after what I saw last night and what I've seen recently? I said, along with other people, based on statements like Phil Jackson, who kind of knew basketball probably a little bit more than I did. He said in today's game, and I think Dennis Rodman said it too, Michael Jordan would average 40 points a game. You know what? I completely disagree. I think he'd average about 47 and a half. They don't play defense. The game is so spread out. You're not allowed to get hit across the face. There's no contact. And Jason, I'm not going to take away anyone's achievement of scoring 70 points in a game. I'm not, but if you think it's the same, it really isn't. Going back to Kobe's 81-point game, I will never forget that Sunday night because I had come back from a Manny Pacquiao, Eric Morales fight, and I was really tired. It was also NFL playoff weekend. So the last thing I'm thinking about, even as a Laker fan back then, is some meaningless game where the fifth-place Lakers, without Shaq, were just playing the Toronto Raptors. That 81-point game, the most impressive thing about that achievement, Jason, if you watch that game, the Lakers were actually down by about 16, 17 points in the third quarter. Every single one of those points up until about the last 90 seconds absolutely mattered. When I see a lot of these high-scoring games now, there's a phrase that comes to my mind, empty calories, okay? Those points of Kobe Bryant absolutely mattered as he's surrounded by Chris Mim, Smush Parker, LaRon Profit, and guys of that ilk. So when you say it's a great achievement, it is, but it's not the same achievement.
Not at all. Steve, I want to move on to it's a play that's gotten a lot of attention from that Buffalo-Kansas City game. And first I ignored it. Then one of my favorite guys on Twitter, Brian Baldinger, does a great job of breaking down plays over social media. He went at it, and it made me it made me kind of reevaluate my position. Let's play the clip of Brian Baldinger talking about the fumble that went out of the end zone that put the Kansas City-Buffalo game, made it far more interesting the rest of the fourth quarter.
Kansas City has a chance to put the Bills away with 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter when they run this fly sweep to McCall Hardman. You know what's coming. We all watched it. Probably 35 million Americans watched this play right here. So here it is. Dodson does a good job right here of getting the ball out. All right, and the ball trickles out of bounds right there. If it trickles out inbounds, Kansas City's got the ball inside the one. But it goes out of bounds inside the goal line. It just seems like a heavy cost. Nobody recovers the fumble. All right, Buffalo forced it. They earned that. But nobody recovers it. It's out of bounds. And the offense gets the ball at the 20-yard line. Like, it seems like a heavy, heavy price to pay for that decision right there. All right? Credit Buffalo. They forced it. But Kansas City loses possession, and they have to defend Buffalo's offense from the 20. It just seems like they need discussion on it.
Don't
Your
tell me
thoughts. Is Brian right?
No, and I love Baldy. Baldy, you are a serious football man. I couldn't disagree more. I love the fact that it's punitive. I love the fact that there's finally a rule that actually benefits, guess what? The defense. Sorry, protect the ball. There's a reason why coaches like Bill Belichick, they have a rule, and TJ Moe can tell you about it. Unless it's fourth down or the last play of the game or half, you do not reach that ball over. How about some responsibility of Hardman and other ball carriers? Don't be a selfish player. Tuck that ball in, get low, and live to see another day. Come on. Come on. We're complaining about a rule that's been fine. Give me a break.
It has been, and that's my reaction. Is like, hey, man, this rule's been in place forever. Why now is it criminal? But if he fumbles any place else on the field and it rolls out of bounds, it's no big deal.
Okay, well, the rule is the rule. Are we really going to do another rule to go out there and benefit the offense? Because, yeah, that hasn't happened in the last 40 years. I think, to me, I love the fact that once you're inside the 5, that, to me, part of being a pro and a guy with football IQ, that your job, ball security. That the running back coach, and I've actually heard this from a running back coach at the University of Miami, name is Don Solinger, great football coach. He used to tell his backs, I talked to one. He said one thing to us, hey, bro, run straight, make no moves, don't fumble, or I'll kill you. That's what we need. If you're McCole Hardman and you know it's first down, what are you doing? And by the way, beyond that, Andy Reid, give the ball to Pacheco. You overthought it, Andy. We love you, Big Red, but come on. No, don't change the rule. I like the punitive nature of it. That's me. What I do.
You know what? You talked some sense into me.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you
is
so
why I'm
much.
here. This is why I waited 90 minutes for my
job.
segment to do that, Whitlock. Jeez.
Thank you, Steve. We'll play some tomorrow, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation, we all just wanna have freedom.